Everyone, hello. Nice to have a little bit of sound. Lovely to see those remaining here. It's almost familial. I feel like you should come closer, come closer. There's a nice gap here. Well, now let me firstly introduce to you our fantastic panel. I have Claudia Machado, who's Senior Partner of Business Development at Tomorrow Street, so a local. Jolyon Barker, who is Global Leader Insight and Client Experience from Deloitte. Raquel Katigbak, who is a Global Client Partner at IBM Consulting and an IBM Distinguished Industry Leader. And last but not least, of course, we have Stefania Marini, who is Group Sales Director at Nokia. So we're going to talk about change the face. And if you were here yesterday, you may have seen I chatted with Serpil Timorai from Vodafone and about the alliance that Vodafone have made when it comes to their Change the Face campaign. But if you weren't here yesterday, Claudia, as the representative of Vodafone, tell us all about it.
Yes, of course. It's an industry call to action so we can bring diversity and inclusion to the tech space. So this was basically initiated in March of 2020, right before the pandemic, and it was actually launched on Women's Day. But the idea came from this survey, where we sent the survey to 8,000 people and asked, what do you think looks like a person in technology? And the overwhelming response was male, white, young, and middle class. And so we thought, you know what, maybe there's something wrong here. I think my mic is falling, but that's okay. And also, out of all of these 8,000 people, only 13% of women in the UK thought that roles in tech were for them. And that is not right. So basically, I'm pleased to be here today with Change of the Face Alliance members. And I think my mic is actually falling.
No, we can hear you perfectly,
yeah.
so don't worry.
I can feel it like kind of going down.
We will get somebody from tech to come and fix her mic, but finish your sentence and then...
Sure. Yeah,
we can hear you.
So it's a pleasure to be here with the Change of the Alliance members. And together, we hope that we change the way that big corporations think about diversity and inclusion, and we actually make a call for action for all of the companies and even industries, small or big, to actually do something about this together, because we believe that as a collective, we have a stronger voice.
Well, thank you very much for explaining that to us. Claudia, now I'm going to move to I mean, you are the token male on this. How unusual for a tech conference to have the token male.
I'm the young male on the panel. Thank you.
But you're doing wonderful things at Deloitte. You're showing some wonderful best practices. So could you share with us some of the insights that you found and how you target your approach?
Yeah, I thought it was worth highlighting 4 things that we're doing at Deloitte, where I think it's making a real difference. The first is the way we are setting targets overall for particularly gender diversity in the business and women's development in the business. We currently have an executive group with over 23% women, a board where we have 33% women, and by 2025 we've said we want to have 30% women in those senior executive groups. We actually have over 40% women in our firm. And we've targeted by 2025, to have 40% women in those senior executive roles. So setting targets, we think, makes a real difference. The second area where we're really moving the needle is on the way we're educating and shifting the culture. So anyone joining Deloitte today around the world is really educated around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the way we think, the way we engage with people, the way we make decisions in terms of promotion, the way leadership is inclusive, the way we think about microaggressions in the workplace, and it makes a real difference. The third area is the way we recruit. And so, of course, we want to change what's happening at the top of our firm, but we have a limited pool. And so we may be well over 40% women around the world, but we have a limited pool. When we recruit about 50% women. But we also, when I think about diversity in the round, are very, very particular about the engagements that we make. So we make particular interventions to help people who've come from disadvantaged backgrounds, to get into our interview process, so they have a higher chance of engagement. And in the UK alone, we've made 1,720 specific interventions over the last 3-4 years to help with that. And the final bit is what we do out in the world, how we talk about women in business, how we talk about women in the executive, women in the boardroom, the thought leadership that we do, and the specific events we run, like the Black Tech Fest in the UK, which was just last week.
Thank you very much. You've really explained so well and so clearly to us. You even threw in a few numbers, which I think...
Just a few.
Just a few. I only allowed you a few, but you reached
I cut them in half.
No, that's great. Thank you for showing us precisely how you are targeting your approach. I'm going to actually now turn to you, Stefania, and I want you to give us a flavor of what Nokia is doing.
So what we do in Nokia is we have structured our I&D agenda around 3 pillars. For each of the pillars, we define a number of actions and targets. And those targets, like for Deloitte, they are cascaded across the company. So the first thing we do is, for inclusion, we actually measure what we call the inclusion experience. So in our annual employee survey, we measure what is the experience of our own employee. The second thing we do, because just looking internally is not sufficient, is we do external benchmark. And by the way, when we get a score that we don't like from the external benchmark, we just change what we are doing. So an example, a practical example. We do as KPI for inclusion, we use the Bloomberg index. And last year, we did not score that well on child leave policy. So this year, our company decided to implement a new child leave company and a new life insurance. So actually putting money around the inclusion topic. The second thing is about diversity. So again, diversity is a big topic. What we started with hardwiring the gender experience. So it means the first thing you need to do is to make visible what does it stand for gender diversity in your company. So what we did is to make public and transparent the numbers in our business review. So I do say it's all about numbers, right? But actually, our diversity index, they are common. They are shared with the rest of the managers. Our managers are measured like the Deloitte. Another thing I love that we did is to close the unexplained gender pay gap. And this is so important because a lot of people talk about diversity, but putting the money on it makes a lot of a difference. So in 2019, we did an off-cycle budget to address the unexplained gap. This year, because diversity is not just about gender, right? And this year, in our North American region, we closed the ethnicity pay gap. So we take a number of actions, and then, of course, we have a number of actions for attracting and retaining the talents. We have, again, pretty much the same targets around how many women by when. Our board, 40% of non-prevailing gender composition. So those are some of the activity. And then we will talk maybe later about some of the others.
We will indeed. And I want to move to you, Raquel, because we were just speaking before we came on stage about, as we all know, there is so many other things to think about when it comes to the tech world and the biases that can be inset. And we were talking about neurodiversity, disability as well. So would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, I think what's really important is, and really I think in support of all technology organizations, is to really understand how you get people of diverse color, ability, gender identity into the technology streams in the first place. So a lot of it, so IBM, for example, is really partnering with a number of different schools, diverse segments of the population, to actually get them into technology to begin with. And then from there, the organizations really need to, what Jolyon was saying as well as what Stefania was saying, really facilitate a data-driven decision-making engine around, and that's non-biased, around how people get hired. So what is the language you're using in order to post technology positions, open technology roles? how do you then use AI, that is trustworthy AI, to then understand who is the best candidate and that you're not excluding anybody out there that may actually be a really good fit. And then how does that employee get the best recommendations for learning, for posting, becoming eminent within the organization as well as outside, so that they can get onto the promotion ladder? How do you create that leadership funnel that's not going to exclude unknowingly people that really have the capability to do so? And I think it really facilitates that higher percentage attainment. So part of the work that we're doing within IBM, in IBM Research specifically, is really focusing on trustworthy AI models. And we're doing that based on how do we train the right models and open that up, by the way, in open source, so that other companies can then test those within their specific processes. We need to really have not just the organizational purpose, but the mechanism from how we do the internal processes as well as the external processes to really change the playing field for a number of different segments, underrepresented segments.
Well, the Change the Face campaign, it is open source and it's best practices shared. So can you talk to us, an open question to all of you really, about anything you've learned from other companies and taken it on board yourselves? Have you any examples of this?
Well, let me just talk about what we're seeing. So we are taking a lot of our insight and the protocols that we're operating in Deloitte. We're sharing them through the Change the Face platform. And so that's open source for everyone. And one of the things that we've seen is that for the larger companies represented here on the stage, we're moving the needle forwards. There is a very large SME community where it's much harder to move the needle forward and where that best practice is less available. So we are making that practice available to SMEs so they can learn. I love the open source idea. I hadn't seen that, and we're using similar protocols and AI in our recruiting. So from my point of view, that's a very interesting experience that I will make sure we're looking at, learning from, and incorporating in the work that we're doing.
And then coming back to Vodafone, really, which was the onset of this whole campaign, what have you seen with the work, the cooperation that you have with not just these companies, but other companies as well?
Sure. And actually, let me just say that when we launched this campaign, it was a great campaign. I remember coming to the office, and there was a mirror everywhere, and you just take a picture with your face on Change the Face campaign. I have several pictures like that. I loved it. But we are learning from other corporations. We are learning from the industry. We are learning from best practices. And we also have stats. We also have, yes, correct, I have several like this. And we also have targets that I want to achieve. My personal goal is that we don't talk about stats or achievements anymore, at least in my lifetime. That just becomes the natural, the norm. But of course, Vodafone also has that, and we learned from the industry. We want to have 40% of women in management positions by 2030. We are at 32% at the moment, which is quite good. We want to have, also by 2030, 25% of people from diverse ethnic backgrounds in global senior leadership roles. And at the moment, we are 18%. And we are learning from all of the companies as well. We have amazing campaigns in place, for example, for a flexible work, maternity, paternity leave. One thing that I want to hear say is that, for example, when you go on maternity or paternity leave, and when you come back, you can work for 4 days and get paid 5 days per week for 6 months. And this is amazing. For me, it was great 4 years ago because I could save money for not putting my kid in school. In London, super expensive. But also, I could spend time with my son. So we are learning from all of the activities. But there's something that we are doing that I haven't seen many companies doing yet, but perhaps you are, is we have a new policy that we launched last year to help women with entering menopause. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm not that far off. So I'm really happy to see these sort of policies being in place, and also the Reconnect program, where we bring people that took a long career break back into the workforce, and we helped 600 people, where, of course, around 500 were women. We all know that women usually are the ones that take the big career gaps, but not only. So we are doing amazing things at Vodafone, and we're learning from industry leaders as well.
I want to pick up on something that, well, you mentioned about the SMEs, and we have a number of them present here today, and entrepreneurs, etc., smaller companies. who will learn best practices from you, but you're talking about things that can be very expensive for a company. And if that's not supported by political level here in Luxembourg, for instance, there's a lot of support when it comes to companies and maternity, paternity leave. That is not the case everywhere else. And I know you're actually quite forward-thinking in this because of your American arm, but America, for instance, is really not great when it comes to things like this. So, there's two phases here. We'll come to the America thing in a minute, but I mean to say that a lot of SMEs cannot afford to put in place some of the things that your huge companies can.
I'll comment really quickly, but then I think one of the things that we can do, and change the face is so powerful for it, is change the expectation and the presumption so that when SMEs are looking in the market, there are more women, there is more diversity of individuals looking to take that employment. So that's a big shift that the biggest companies, the biggest recruiters in the world, some of whom are represented on this stage, can really change the game and help others and give confidence to just think a little bit differently each time they recruit, and to apply some of that learning about the micro considerations, the cultural considerations that have defined how decisions were made in the past. And it makes a real difference. I hear my son has just joined a large business. I hear him talking about this in a way that is very different to the way I saw it when I joined a large business.
But it's a bit of bias as well, isn't it? Because I
and
guess
trying to remove that.
Yeah, it doesn't cost more money to hire more diverse workforce.
Exactly.
So it's just a matter of mentality.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to move to you, actually, first, Stefania. Tell us a little bit about what you've experienced in your career, in fact, how things have changed for hopefully the better in what you've observed in your career.
Right. So I think I had a shocking beginning when I moved to Asia and the Philippines, and when I was leading a team of people from Malaysia, Thailand, and very diverse culture. So, and it was difficult to be the female manager there. Now, I remember once, so I was doing field manager for Nokia. I was Nokia at the time, then I left, then I came back, but anyhow. And we needed, when you do installation of a complex system, you need to clean the floor, otherwise you have dust. And we have people doing that. So I went to the guy who was in charge of it, and I asked, would you mind to clean? And he looked back at me, and he said, I'm not the woman here. Now, that was not the right answer to me, but I'm quite temperamental. But I decided, I'm gonna help him, we do it together, I'm the woman, but we do it together. I'm gonna teach you how to do your work. Today is a completely different world. I work in a company of 90,000 people, 160 nationality. I have an immense diverse opportunity within my company. In our stand today, I counted this morning, we have 11 nationality. It's amazing what I can learn. Today is all different. We look at the right language. We see how we can include more people. My company does, and by the way, this is amazing. We get the inclusion as part of our mandatory training. Now, everybody who does a training, there is a way to get bored and to cheat, right? Particularly when they give you credit. The training, the way my company has been doing training around the diversity and inclusion is actually kind of a video game. Mm-hmm. And there is no way you move to the next level until you give the right answer to the previous level. Excellent. And it is amazing what you learn, because in our management team, we were discussing about think we learned in this training. So think I've changed a lot since when I started, for the better. And the best part of it is that diversity is not just about women, right? Yes. We have been talking 20 plus years, 30 about women diversity. Yep. In my company this year, we started with the Disability Inclusion Project, and I'm proud, my country, Italy, we are never first on anything but fashion, beauty, food, and all the rest, But anyhow, besides that, Nokia Italy is part of this trial project, and it's so good. It's really good. It's an amazing experience. I get paid to learn things, which makes me a better person. Guys, what better?
Yeah.
Thank you for your passion. Raquel, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to IBM, and Jolyon was talking about the targets, how you measure things, because everything is measured, benchmarked for improvements. And in fact, I was talking to you a little bit about this yesterday, Jolyon. We know in certain countries there's specific percentages of boys versus girls who go on to study computer science in university, secondary school, A-levels, whichever way. The path into, let's say, computer science, engineering, maths, some of the more physical science STEM subjects, it's a smaller percentage. And when we're talking about change the face of tech, how are you in your companies, let's start with IBM, measuring, let's say, the female quotient, the diversity quotient, however you want to measure it, within, let's say, the actual coding part, not just overall in the company where there might be more women in the human resources part, for instance, but specifically in the tech part of tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think part of it is really around everyone's collective burden of responsibility to make sure the representation is visible outside. So IBM, for example, as a tech company of more than 100 years old, we have designations of technology distinctions, including master inventors, distinguished engineers, and a major, we have very, very strong female representation, diverse representation actually across those distinctions. And the way that we map and have observability around the promotion paths into those roles is transparent. So there's an actual process, there is sponsorship that you get. I do think that what is interesting is how we can start to incorporate more of the facilitation of entry into those processes across a broader stream of individuals. Because when someone goes into IBM, for example, as a graduate, under the graduate scheme, they're exposed automatically across a number of different job roles, across a number of different brands. So you can be for 3 months on a project working on with a healthcare client. Another time you could be working on an internal DevOps project for our internal finance team. You can then move around so that you end up seeing and working with a number of different organizations within the business, where you can start to ascertain where your skill sets are really best needed. The undergraduate scheme for us is really important because this is where we see the next 50% representation into STEM and certainly into the professional technology organizations. And then it's really facilitated by how you get the right learning and the skill sets that are much in demand today. It is really a war on talent, for sure. And so part of what IBM is committing to, similar goals to what Jolyon and Stefania have already shared, is really how do we create the mechanism to empower communities of similar identities, intersectional identities of individuals, so that we also have internal support and advocacy. So it's really saying we're going to combine the formal education, visibility to what it means to be equal across everything, along with formal leadership programs that basically develop that pipeline of leadership there, but also have that burden of responsibility shared with each of us as individuals and also with allies, because it's now the burden of responsibility needs to be pushed more and more on people who are in positions of power to do the promotions, which is not represented on this panel here, right? To really then make sure that we have visibility to what the issues are and that we can also course correct. Leading indicators are how many people are actually moving through each of the different phases or promotion bands that are underrepresented segments.
Jolyon, I promised, thank you.
Yeah, no, welcome.
I promised we'd come back to America.
Yeah.
Because I know actually when it comes to leading Change the Face, and actually Deloitte are doing very, very well. You've got excellent figures, some of which you shared with us. But America is not great in certain things. One of them, notoriously so, is maternity leave, for instance.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that in your own company?
Well, to date, it's interesting. We are very highly regarded for the work that we've done, and it's at all the levels that I talked about earlier, that Raquel's actually talked about in terms of the mentoring, progression of women through the organization. I think we are ahead of the curve in the US in terms of maternity leave. So I think the question now, of course, it's maternity leave and paternity leave, and it's the way you balance it for everybody rather than just for women. So we are trying to be very equal in the way we look at that and do that.
And I didn't mean when I asked the question, you as a company, I meant how can you push...
Within the US in general.
Yes.
Well, I think the challenge in the US is maternity and paternity leave. Actually, it's the holiday culture in general and how people create space in their lives in a way that makes sense. I think there's a lot more to do in the US. And I see that in our business. I see it much more broadly as well. I wanted to add one other lens as well on development that we see. So we've talked a lot about how do we get the analytical skills for women, and I think role models are essential, and Raquel's talked a bit about that, the mentoring. And then we're involved, and I'm sure IBM and Nokia are in the same, certainly Vodafone are, with areas like coding for girls. So making sure that there's a really strong mentorship through our young men and women leaders and new analyst consultant helping train girls, and there have been over 20,000 girls go through this particular program in the UK, the US, and it's growing and growing and growing, along with many others, to help really change the aspiration. Because most of this is about ambition and desire. It is nothing, as we all know, to do with capability, of course. So it's aspiration and ambition, and the more we can create it, the better we will all do.
And of course, all of this is linked to you can only be what you can see.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful platform here to showcase this. We've got a couple of minutes left. I know that you have to dash off to a very important meeting this evening in Glyndebourne. If you don't know what Glyndebourne is, please look it up because it's a wonderful thing. But I want a final thought to leave our audience. It could be on, well, I was going to say almost any topic, but we're not going to go down the Italian fashion route. Just on Change the Face, what would you like to leave our audience with?
So I think what I like to say is that diversity is a fact, right? Each of us we are what we are. Again, I'm Italian, I'm a woman, but inclusion is a choice. And it's a choice we do every day. And what I think we have to do is every day to choose the way of being inclusive. And that's what I would like to ask to change the face.
Thank you, Stefania. Raquel.
I think I really want to lean hard on the sponsorship angle and make sure that the leadership that are making decisions about the promotions and who gets into those leadership roles are actively mentoring, are actively coaching, are actively sponsoring high potential females and making sure that there is this wonderful work-life integration that's required. You spoke about paternity and maternity there. So I think that as much as we need to advocate for ourselves as underrepresented communities in leadership, technology leadership, we need to also activate and mobilize the broader community that's already there in those positions of influence and power.
Thank you, Raquel. And just a shout out to this fantastic photo that was taken by her 16-year-old.
Yeah, that's right.
Fabulous. I was going to build on that, and I think the biggest shift that we have to make, and it builds on what Stefania and Raquel have said, is a real change in culture, in organizations. I see it happening in ours, I see it happening in the workplace, and a real change in the level of empathy around all elements of this opportunity. And I think the key thing is this is, without question, a massive opportunity. And I see the benefit every day that I bring a team together that is truly diverse in all its different elements. The impact and the quality of conversation is higher and it's better. And I think we need to change the culture so that everyone recognizes that and sees the value.
Which is something that we hear less and less these days, because of course with the Change the Face and the more diverse the team, what we heard about originally in the conversation is bottom line business, finances increase. Final word to you,
Thank
Claudia.
you. So as I said before, I really hope that in my lifetime we don't have to have this conversation anymore. But what I want to say is that a call to action to all of you, not just for big or small corporations, but you as an individual at home. I have a 4-year-old that came home the other day with 2 pencils. One was blue and one was pink. And he said, "Mommy, choose one." And I chose blue, because it's my favorite color. And he said, "No, Mommy, you're a girl. You should choose pink." take it, the pink. And that got me thinking, you never heard this conversation at home ever, I can tell you. So it is up to you to teach your kids, your nephews, your cousins, doesn't matter who, your colleagues, just to tell them that what is right, what is wrong, and also call it out when you see it happen. So my final thought is just a call for action. Think about your own actions, the others' actions, and also teach the future generations. But you cannot change everything just by doing things in our corporations. We need to change actually the root cause and fix it.
Well, thank you so much for that fabulous point. And the first thing that came into my head was I didn't think we'd be going back to fashion, but I was thinking about boys' fashion and the colors available to them. But it does come back to fashion after all, so we'll have to have you back on stage, Stefania, to talk about fashion for men one day. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa.